Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's dive into today's story with a tale of composure, cunning, and a masterclass in nonchalant revenge. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. No shirt, no shoes, no pizza. The customer got exactly what he ordered. I was a junior pizza cook and watched as this guy pulled into the parking space right outside our door and stepped out wearing just a pair of blue jeans, nothing else. Like all restaurants in our area, we were required by law to refuse service in this case. We had a sign on our window, "No shoes, no shirt, no service." It quoted municipal law. Our manager at the time was one of the best I'd ever had. He was Hindu, an immigrant from India. He had a very calming way about him. He was also firm when needed. Today, he turned into an implacable wall. The man was obviously in a hurry. "I want a large pepperoni and 3 large Cokes." "I'm sorry, sir, we're unable to serve you until you put on a shirt and shoes." Imagine this said in an accent that's both British and Indian. "Just take my order and I'll go grab my shirt." By now, people were lining up behind him. "I'm sorry, sir, that's against the law." The guy got angry and started cussing at us. He then spoke directly to our cashier. My boss countered by sending everyone from the front to the back room, leaving only him at the register. And then he just shut down, stopped talking, and looked right through the guy. The guy became furniture to my boss. The guy got seriously angry. He threatened to kick my boss's butt. He threatened to call the cops. When another customer told him to get out of line so they could order, he threatened to kick the customer's butt. That's when 3 customers, young men and obviously very fit, suggested that they would be very willing to have their butts kicked, jointly. Shirtless guy realized he'd lost, and that he was wasting his own time, so he rushed back to his car and put on tennis shoes and a greasy shirt. It looked like maybe he'd been working under his car. He came back in and tried to walk to the front of the line, but no one was having that. My boss told him to get in line and then ignored him entirely. My boss was already taking the next customer's order. Then there was a couple, and after that, the 3 guys who wanted some butt kicking. When shirtless guy placed his order, he said he was in a hurry and that we had better get his order very fast. We only made deep dish pizza, depending on the topping load. It had to cook a certain amount of time. We'd put a lid on the tray so it would bake, then remove the lid so the broiler could brown the toppings. 17 to 20 minutes bake, 4 minutes browning. After 10 minutes, shirtless guy was getting pissed. He claimed we were slowing things down on purpose and to give him his damn pizza now. So my boss calmly said, "Right away." He asked me to fill the guy's sodas. Boss went to the oven, took the lid off the pizza long enough for it to brown, then took it out, cut it to standard slices, and boxed it up. The guy cussed us all out again, took his pizza, and left. The pizza chef asked my boss if he knew the customer had a box of uncooked dough. That's how the customer wanted it. I said we were out of large cups, so I used medium cups instead. "That's fine," my boss replied. "They were the largest cups we had." No one spit in his food. That would have horrified my boss, who was a professional at giving the customer what they asked for. Your boss handled this situation with the kind of calm control most people only dream of. The way he stuck to the rules without getting flustered, even when shirtless guy was throwing a tantrum, is nothing short of impressive. The silent treatment, combined with the subtle tactics like boxing up an uncooked pizza because that's what he wanted, was brilliant. It wasn't about being petty, it was about sticking to the customer's words and serving them exactly what they demanded, even if it wasn't what they actually wanted. And our second story. Just answer my simple question. Years back, I had a temp job at the reception of a hospital. The concept of the hospital was that external doctors could book rooms for surgery and for their patients after surgery if they had something bigger to do that they couldn't do in their own medical practice. There was also a sleep laboratory run by an external practice where patients stayed overnight for their examination/measurements. For that, usually the technician and the patient started coming in at around 7 p.m. and they all left at 6 a.m. Usually anything besides the measurements during sleeping were done in the medical practice, which was in walking distance in the same street. Setting: Random day somewhere way before 7 p.m., where usually nobody's in the sleep laboratory. Nice woman, NW, comes in and asks about the way to the sleep laboratory. I'm pretty sure that she's at the wrong location, and I explain that to her. I ask her to take a seat nearby and to give me a moment so I can check with the practice where she needs to go. She thanks me and takes a seat. While I'm still typing the number of practice, enter awful woman, AW. AW asks the same questions as NW. I try to explain the situation, same as before, but she aggressively interrupts me and slams something along the lines of, "It can't be so hard to answer a simple question. Tell me where the sleep laboratory is now," in my face. "Okay, lady," I smile and tell her the way, first floor to the right, and so on. AW walks off. I call the practice and they tell me that, as I expected, nobody's at the hospital that day and that every patient should go to the practice and that they all should also know that because it's on their note with the date and time for the appointment. I inform NW and she gets going to the practice, probably still in time for her appointment. AW comes back after around 15 minutes and tells me that nobody's there. I just shrug and go back to my work. Sometimes life hands out lessons in the gentlest yet most poetic ways. Guys, have you ever seen someone's rudeness backfire this perfectly? Let's hear your stories. It's always fun to see karma in action. And our last story. When my vintage BMW became the HOA's worst nightmare. For context, my family and I recently moved into a rental while our new home is being built. The rental's tucked in the back of a gated community on a quiet, mostly empty street. It seemed like a peaceful temporary spot until the HOA decided to poke the bear. Yesterday, I received a letter from the HOA informing me I was violating their strictly enforced by towing rule prohibiting overnight street parking. The letter included a photo of my project car, an older but pristine BMW parked neatly beside my rental on the street. The tone of the letter was condescending at best, and I was instantly annoyed. Why? Because several of my neighbors park on the street all the time, yet my car was the one singled out. I did some digging and finally got access to the HOA rules, which I hadn't seen before since I'm a renter. It was worse than I imagined. No street parking, no garage doors open unless actively in use, no exterior decorations not pre-approved by the HOA board, and an entire section about acceptable lawn shades. It felt less like a community and more like an authoritarian regime. The clincher? My neighbors' shiny SUVs and trucks have been parked on the street since the day I moved in, yet my meticulously kept vintage BMW was apparently too much for the pristine sensibilities of the HOA. It didn't take a genius to figure out that my car's age, not its condition, was the real issue. At first, I considered complying to keep the peace, but the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Why should I follow rules selectively applied just because someone decided my car didn't meet their aesthetic standards? So I decided to dig into my options. Here's what I found. The HOA had every right to enforce their ridiculous rules within the private streets of the neighborhood. However, the public street just outside their gated entrance was fair game. It's completely legal to park there for as long as I want, and there's nothing they can do about it. Cue my first move. I drove my BMW to the public street just outside the community's gated entrance and parked it dead center in front of their pristine gate. I made sure it was perfectly legal, left plenty of room for traffic, and walked away with a smug grin. It didn't take long. Within 24 hours, I received another letter, this one with far less condescension. Instead, it was practically begging, "Dear resident, while your vehicle is legally parked, it's causing concern for the community's image. We kindly request you relocate your vehicle." Yeah, no. The next morning, I noticed one of the board members pacing around the car, clearly fuming. As I walked past, she flagged me down. HOA Karen, "You need to move your car. This is unacceptable. People are complaining." Me, complaining about my legally parked car? HOA Karen, "It's an eyesore for our entrance. People might think this is a rundown neighborhood." Me, feigning concern, "Wow, I wouldn't want that. But unfortunately, I can't park it on the street inside the neighborhood per your letter, and since my driveway's already full, this is the next closest spot." Her face turned a shade of red I didn't know was possible. She started sputtering something about community standards, and then the classic Karen line came out. HOA Karen, I'll call the police. Me, please do. Let them know if they need me to clarify the parking laws for them. Needless to say, the police never showed, but Karen wasn't done. Over the next week, I received letters almost daily. Some demanded I move the car, others suggested I pay for a storage space. One even threatened to revisit my parking situation with legal action, but we both knew that was an empty bluff. Seeing how much my old BMW irked them gave me an idea. I decided my car needed a little spring cleaning. So one sunny Saturday, I parked in front of their gate as usual and spent the entire afternoon washing, waxing, and detailing the car. It gleamed like a mirror, and I made sure to wave at every car that came through the gate. The HOA board, livid. A week later, they tried to block my car in with orange cones. I laughed, called the city, and watched with pure satisfaction as a public works employee remove the cones within an hour. Karen stood there, arms crossed, glaring daggers at me as the cones disappeared. Realizing they were out of options, Karen and her crony started grasping at straws. They sent letters to the homeowner I was renting from, hoping to pressure me through them. Big mistake. My landlord, a no-nonsense retired Marine, called me immediately after receiving the letter, laughed, and told me, keep it parked there as long as you want. Feeling emboldened, I decided to add one final touch. I printed a large laminated sign and placed it on my windshield. It read, "This legally parked car is proudly sponsored by your friendly HOA board. Complaints? Take it up with them." The gate became a tourist attraction. Neighbors stopped to take pictures. Visitors inquired about the feud. Karen stopped coming out altogether. Eventually, my rental term ended and I moved into my newly built house. For all I know, my departure was celebrated with champagne. But for those glorious few months, I turned their picture-perfect neighborhood into a battlefield of my revenge. And I don't regret a single second. Your landlord backing you up was the cherry on top. It's not every day you find someone who supports your cause against HOA tyranny. I can only imagine the seething rage of the board members as they realized there was literally nothing they could do. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.